end. We have our last speaker today, DIANNE AZOORHIGES. She will address one topic that I think every SMP has experienced in his professional life: how to assist and provide services to clients which are growing businesses. There are times in the life of an SMP where your client is growing bigger and bigger, and sometimes it risks outgrowing you because you're no longer able to extend services to a firm, to a company which has become bigger and bigger. How can we address this situation? How can SMPs be trusted advisors and keep on being trusted advisors to growing businesses? DIANNE, please, can you help clarify this?
Thank you. So my topic, capacity to provide professional services to growing businesses. And if my slides come up.
Can we please have the, yeah, thank you.
So perhaps we'll just start by defining what we mean by a growing business. And I think really all our clients need to be moving forward, otherwise they're likely to be in decline. But a growing business is a business that's looking to expand its market share, its position in the marketplace, where it's looking to grow. Maybe locally, maybe overseas, it might have an online presence, but it's a business that's got ambition. A business that's growing requires very different services to the basic services that an SMP provided 20, 30 years ago. They will need help with their financing strategies because they may wish to acquire another business, they may wish to take on more employees, they may want to invest in infrastructure. So they need help with their financing strategies. They'll also need help with their investment decisions, because quite often they have a great idea, but is it going to give them the returns that they anticipate? So again, an SMP can provide services to a growing business to help them evaluate their investment decisions to see if it's going to give them the returns that they really want. Cash flow management is critical to all SMEs, but particularly when they're expanding, where they may risk overcommitting their resources. So again, an SMP needs to walk alongside an SME and actively help them to manage their cash flow so that they avoid any pitfalls and any adverse consequences of not managing their cash. And then with the growing business, quite often you find that their governance structure lags behind what's really needed. Their focus is on growing the business, and maybe their IT systems, their management structure, their expertise in-house is not quite at the level that's needed to operate the business as it grows. And again, an SMP that's alongside a growing SME can independently evaluate the stage that they're at and say, I think it's time for the next stage. You need to employ more expertise in-house, or you need to outsource that requirement. Also, with the growing business, there are changing requirements, changing compliance requirements that the SME needs to be mindful of. And again, the SMP's role is to bring that to their attention. So there are legal issues, taxation issues, risks and liabilities change as a business grows, as they expand into different jurisdictions. And financial reporting obligations, may change as well. They may go from a situation where they have no public financial reporting obligations to one where they need to prepare accounts in accordance with accounting standards. So a growing business has a very different need for professional services to one that's just simply requires compliance services. And this leads us to ask the question, well, will an SMP in 2020 need a trusted advisor? And I consider that yes, they absolutely will. An SMP is quite different to, an SME, is quite different to a company that operates in a listed market where their focus may be on maximizing profits, maximizing share price. An SME quite often has different objectives. They might have a desire to leave a legacy for their family may wish to have community impact. They may wish to minimize taxation rather than maximizing profits. There's a whole range of different objectives that an SME wants to keep in balance. And I think that the practitioner who understands the motivations of their SME client can really add value in anticipating their needs to help them with issues such as asset protection or succession planning, in addition to the traditional services. I think having that understanding of what the client seeks to achieve and how they're going to get there is a tremendous value-adding service, which will address some of the fee pressures that Monica spoke about earlier. So having access to that professional advisor and a professional advisor who can grow with the business is really important. And typically, an SMP has been a one-stop shop, where a client can come in and they have all their professional services met. And in 2014, I think that's already becoming quite difficult. But in 2020, I think the role of the trusted advisor will be quite different. I see the role of the trusted advisor as being a lead professional for a team of expertise. He or she will be the lead professional who identifies when a greater depth of knowledge is needed to be able to provide their client with access to that knowledge as and when needed. So that leads us to a question: does that mean that the SMP must develop their in-house experts rather than being general practitioners? And with all the regulation that we see with taxation, accounting standards, superannuation, employment taxes, there's such a range of regulation that the general practitioner needs to understand. It becomes difficult to even anticipate how a general practitioner can have the breadth of knowledge needed to service their client and maintain a depth of expertise in individual areas. I think we're looking at a situation where a general practitioner will need to be able to call upon experts as and when they're needed. There's possibly an 80-20 rule there, where 80% of the client's needs can be met by the SMP, but there will be 20% where you need to go deeper into an issue. And this is a skill that SMPs will really need to develop, where they can identify where more information is needed, where more expertise is needed, and have access to those professionals that they can bring in as and when needed. I think the resource management is going to be really difficult here, because can an SMP afford to maintain an in-house expert? And that will really depend on the mix of their clients, whether or not that's going to be feasible. I think it's more likely that an SMP needs to be part of a network or an association where those resources are available, so that they can be called upon as and when needed. So a strategic alliance with other firms either nationally or probably internationally as well, as SMEs expand overseas, is going to be critical to the life of the SMP. I think the days when an SMP could exist in isolation are almost definitely gone, or we're drawing to the end of that. We need to work in collaboration with other professionals, both locally and overseas. And maybe there's also a role for the local accounting bodies, and certainly IFAC has taken up the challenge there to provide resources. But it will be critical for an SMP to collaborate with other professionals to understand when a depth of expertise is needed by his client. So this raises interesting questions about whether or not SMPs need to specialize in the type of client they have, or the type of advice or service that they provide. And really, an SME will be best serviced by a practitioner who understands what's needed. We're in an age where there's plenty of information, there's plenty of marketing information that's available, and our clients certainly in Australia, are bombarded with marketing information from competitive firms. But an SME is often time poor. They don't have the time to go through masses of information. They need the information they need to manage their business at that moment. And again, I think this is where an SMP can really add value by anticipating those needs and providing access to the services when they are needed, rather than just bombarding them with everything that's available. I think by having access to either a national or both a national and international association, they also have access to providing expertise as a client enters another jurisdiction, and Albert touched on this as well. It's great if your client is saying, we're in Australia and we have a lot of work going into Asia, and it's great if your client's saying, I think we're going to expand into Malaysia, we want to do some work in Malaysia. If you can pick up a phone and say to another practitioner, my client's wants to work in Malaysia, how do I advise them? What's the best way forward? And having that immediate access and immediate point of contact is certainly a competitive advantage. We also touched on the size of clients, and I think this is absolutely critical to know when a client has outgrown your service offering, because I think as soon as you start to deliver a less than optimal service, that's where your reputation will start to suffer. So knowing where to draw the line, where to have your alliances with perhaps larger practices and smaller practices are important. Also, when clients come to you, a growing business might be a business with revenues of $2 million, $20 million, $200 million. And the type of practice that's going to service each of those is quite distinct. And the expertise that practice will have should be appropriate to the market that they're servicing. So I think having alliances with smaller practices, so that if a client comes to you and they're clearly smaller than the client that you service most effectively, it's great to be able to refer those down. If a client outgrows you, it's great to be able to walk with them to the next stage. And maybe you will lose the audit, but there are other services that you can continue to provide as their trusted advisor because you've built up a relationship over a number of years. The integrity of the SMP is absolutely vital. The SMP's success is often built on the relationship of the practitioner with his client. So throughout their journey with a growing business, maintaining integrity I think is the absolute key. I might finish on that note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dianne.